Well, joining me now from Chicago is community leader and activist Jamal Green. He's currently running as a candidate for the mayor of Chicago. And in Miami, we have John Cardillo. He's a former officer with the NYPD and is now a TV presenter. I thank you all for joining us on the Newsmakers. John Cardillo, let me start with you. Was the killing of Harith Augustus, the man they called Snoop the barber, was it justified?
Oh, absolutely. The body camera video shows somebody clearly and illegally armed. That individual resisted the police, and on that same video clearly reached for a firearm, and that was about the most textbook use of deadly force I've seen by the police in a long time. All he had to do was comply, put his hands up. If he complied with the police, he'd be alive today. Instead, he tried to draw a weapon on them. And as we say in the law enforcement world, if you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. He decided his own fate. He was shot because of his actions and his actions alone.
And John, if you were in the same situation as a police officer, would you have shot him?
Absolutely. I've been in that position. My unit used to look for robberies, illegal guns. Those police officers were acting in concert with the Supreme Court decision. Terry v. Ohio allowed them to pat down someone's clothing if they saw a shape consistent with a firearm. They did. The individual resisted and attempted to draw that firearm. Absolutely, I would have fired.
Jamal Green, when you hear John defending the killing of Harith Augustus, how do you feel about that? And is there any sense, in your opinion, to what he's saying?
So I understand what he's saying about him grabbing the waist, but we don't know what he was grabbing for because that's not as clear. But there's so many other questions that need to be answered before we determine. John, listen, John, you had your chance. So there's so many other questions that need to be answered in regards to this police shooting case. So why were they approaching him in the first place, right? What was that conversation like with that first police officer? And why did those other two police officers immediately grab him and be the aggressors in a situation? We need to hear that audio, all right? We saw a video with no audio. We need to have all of the evidence before we make a decision on what's justified or not. We got to have a further conversation about why police officers are the aggressors instead of asking questions. Asking him, do you have a FOIA card? Do you have a concealed and carry? And getting on that way, because leading with kindness would get you in a better situation than how it ended. And it shouldn't have ended tragically if they would have handled it the correct way.
Okay, John Cardillo, last year, hold on, John, for a second. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Last year, a Justice Department review found Chicago officers used force nearly 10 times more in incidents involving black suspects than against white suspects.
Definitely.
Is that an irrelevant stat to you, or is there something to discuss there?
I think the stat is in line with the black crime rates and the black on black crime rates in the city of Chicago. Blacks are committing more crimes. They are killing each other en masse. And let me go to my co-guest's comment. The police have a split second to make a decision. They approached him professionally. They tried to engage him in conversation. Through their training and experience as Chicago police officers in one of the worst neighborhoods in the world, that's where they were. They saw a shape consistent with that of a firearm. Few officers in the world know what a firearm under clothing looks like better than Chicago PD officers on street patrol. They attempted to engage him in conversation.
Oh my God.
He evaded them. Well, the video doesn't lie, my friend. He evaded them, and then he clearly put his right hand to where that firearm was. The cops needed to go home alive. If he had a FOIA card, if he had a concealed weapons license, hey, when I was a cop, I was twice stopped on the street by NYPD. They drew their guns on me. They didn't know who I was. Somebody called, said said a man with a gun. Slow down. Said a man with a gun. You know what I did? I shut my mouth. I put the hands on the wall, and I said, guys, my ID is in my wallet, my left rear pocket. I didn't want to look like Jerry Rice doing a spin and pivot, trying to evade the cops, then reach for my gun, because that's how you get killed.
Okay.
And you should be more concerned with the black-on-black crime rates in Chicago.
I don't want to. So let's address that point, right? Okay, so hold on. I don't want to talk about the actual video anymore now, because we're not all sort of forensic experts on this video. We're not going to unpack the video itself, right? The body cam footage. Let's talk about the point that John made. Jamal, for those who, like John, say that Chicago's problems run deeper than the police, and they talk about gang violence, particularly within the African-American community, what John would call black-on-black violence. For those who make that point and try to establish a context within which the cops are operating, do you accept that discussion and that argument?
Not at all. I mean, people like John, and I'm glad he's not a police officer anymore, but they have this whole mindset that black people, they have to aggressively approach black people in communities. Let's ask if that man was white, would that situation would have happened? He just talked about how he was saw a suspect that stayed alive. If he was white, that situation would not have happened. And we talking about the crime in Chicago, you got to talk about the social problems and the issues that are happening in communities, the economics, the education, the mental health, things that we aren't dealing with. And so that does not mean a police officers should be able to use 10 times as much force. You just quoted the report as other cities. They still have the slave catching patrol model that was in the 1820s, and that have to change. They should be serving the community and making sure that everyone stays safe and talking to people. This man, let me make this clear. This man did not have a record. He was not a criminal. He's never arrested before.
So what? So what? So what? He tried to draw a gun and kill the cops. There's a first time for everything. Maybe he didn't have a record because he hadn't been caught. And your comments are ridiculous. If blacks are committing more crimes...
He had a FOIA card, just not a conceal and carry.
They're going to use force more often. Every criminal started somewhere. Many people don't have criminal records because they've never been caught. But to ignore the fact that black crime rates in Chicago are off the charts. And by the way, that's not John Cardillo's opinion. That's the opinion of the Department of Justice Federal Bureau of Investigation, Uniform Crime Reporting 2016. 2017's abstract is out. The full report will be released in 2 months. It again, when you compare it with U.S. Census data, shows that in certain census tracts in Chicago, neighborhoods, streets, this area where this incident happened, black crime rates are about 50 times what they are in the rest of the nation.
So that means that they're supposed to approach and kill them? Arrest and kill should be the first mindset?
That's the FBI and the U.S. Census. Reconcile the data yourself. I do it all the time on my show. So if the police are using force more often...
So arresting and killing should be the first mindset.
When someone has a gun, your duty is to yourself and the innocent public. This man had an illegal firearm. He resisted the police. He drew for that firearm.
It wasn't illegal.
You seem like
wasn't illegal.
Hold on, let me see. You seem like it was illegal. It was illegal. The minute he tried to draw it on police.
It was not. He had a FOIA card. He had a FOIA card, not a concealed and carry. Was not illegal.
FOIA card. Give you
Get
the
the
right
facts
to
straight,
carry.
John.
Okay.
FOIA card not give you to carry in Illinois.
Okay, so John believes he was going for the weapon,
but it wasn't
which made it illegal.
illegal.
Jamal, you don't, right? Again, let me broaden this out into a political discussion now. So Jamal, as we expand on this, Chicago in many ways, for many people, is a very unique city. The context within Chicago is very unique for a lot of people. However, Jamal, when we look at Harith Augustus, a lot of people add his name to Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald.
Yeah.
Do you as well? Is it part of the same trend across the nation to you?
Listen, it's not a question of do we just add this case. I mean, this has been happening all across this country for years now, and this is a problem that needs to be talked about. Police officers are not being held accountable in this country, and we have Jason Van Dyke, who we saw on tape shoot Laquan McDonald 16 times like a dog because he said he had a knife and lunged at him, which came out to be incorrect. And yet Jason Van Dyke, several years later, is still out now, finally about to face trial in September after the Fraternal Order of Police gave him a job as a janitor. So the people and communities all over the country are crying out for police reform and accountability. All right, so every case that happens, whether it is considered justified or not by the policies put in place by the police departments in the local city, that no one cares about that. They care about the fact that they aren't seeing police officers go to jail when they do wrong. And until we have accountability, until we have community policing, then we will never move forward as a country, and people will always be scared and fear for their lives of police. When is it okay to fear for our lives, all right? When is it okay for black people and colors and communities to fear the police? Because right now they do, but it means nothing.
John Cardillo,
Look,
what's so wrong about police reform and accountability?
It's not needed. Jamal just defeated his own argument. He admitted that Officer Van Dyke in the Laquan McDonald shooting is going to be prosecuted. Officer Michael Slager, who shot Walter Scott in South Carolina.
I said the trial is about to start.
Yeah, that means being prosecuted. That's the definition of being prosecuted. Please let me finish.
Yes, that doesn't mean he's going to jail. Doesn't mean he's going to jail.
Going to trial means being prosecuted. If you don't understand that, not my problem. Let me finish. He's being prosecuted. Walter Scott, Michael Slager, who shot Walter Scott, being prosecuted. The officer in Minnesota who shot Justine Damon, I don't hear him complaining because she was a white woman, being prosecuted. This is cut and dry. And Jamal, this is the wrong hill for you to make your stand on. This guy was clearly drawing a gun on the police. You sound like a nice guy. You sound like a sharp guy. This is the wrong case for you to make your stand on. The guy spun around, resisted police, tried to draw a gun. Quite frankly, you're doing your brand and your cause a disservice.
John, let me ask you. John, can I ask you?
Listen,
protesters. Hold on, Jamal. Hold on for a second.
Nowhere.
One more question for John, and I'm going to get you to respond. John, because the protesters are calling for the officer's name to be released, the officer who fired the fatal shot, would you want that as well? It happened with Michael Brown.
No.
Tell me why.
No, because this is mob rule. They want to harass this officer. They want to threaten his family. They want to destroy his life. He's entitled to due process, as is every other American. When you put on a uniform, your constitutional rights don't go away. This police officer saved lives by firing those shots. The guy was drawing his gun. He evaded police. He resisted. I can't stress enough that this is a textbook case that should be used as training in terms of what exactly to do in police academies. My friend Jamal, who's never patrolled for one day, let me just end with this. If Jamal were to undergo a use of force training and with simunitions was put in this position, I guarantee you he would have fired his gun as well, because you are not going to wait to see if the bad guy kills you first. Human nature, human instinct is survival. The police acted legally, justifiably, and appropriately.
Jamal Green.
Okay, so let me be clear. Now, one time did I say it was justified or not? But what we don't have is we don't have all the footage. We don't have all the audio.
You said it was unjustified the entire
show. John,
on, John,
can I talk?
You're lying now, but now you're contradicting yourself.
What I said there are more questions, John. I said there are more questions that need to be answered. So this is too early to be calling a shooting justified or not. We don't know. I want to know why he was approached. I want to hear that audio. I want to know why those officers aggressively grabbed him in the wrong way, because we have a problem in the city of Chicago where police officers are badly trained when it comes to de-escalation and avoiding conflict.
Do you have a problem in Chicago?
These questions need to be asked.
Do you have a problem in Chicago with young black men killing other black men? Do you have that problem in Chicago?
Listen, we have poverty problems going on across this country. We have social problems and economics and education problems all over this country. Let's start talking about the root cause, because people are killing each other in neighborhoods all across this country. White people are killing each other as well. Let's make that clear. But in our neighborhoods, people are in survival mode. People are in survival mode. There's a lack of investment when it comes to jobs. The black unemployment rate is the highest in Chicago than it is across the country. All right? So let's make that clear. Let's stay on the facts of what leads to violence.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Listen, gentlemen, I'm going to have a bigger panel. Invite both of you on, along with others, to talk about some of the root causes here. I think that's something we need to do on this program very soon. But for the moment, I've got to wrap and I'm going to move on. Jamal Green and John Cardillo, I thank you both for joining us here on the Newsmakers.